back, Terry Magic. I've got my phone on my dash. Just wanted to talk to you about the bands recently that came out. So bands today, if you didn't know, Ragavan is banned in Legacy. So I wanted to talk about that as far as it goes with Legacy versus Modern, and what that could mean for Modern in the future. I also wanted to talk about a little bit about Standard and Arena. They also got bans with, and then there's a historic ban as well that I'm not as familiar with that format, but it's interesting when something, gets banned. In Legacy, Ragavan was banned because it came back and it made Delver a very, very good deck again, which is great, fine and dandy, I'm all for it. But Delver itself is not that big a deal because it's not generating any card advantage. And DRC to some extent is fine too, but Ragavan, if you can produce one Ragavan, like you can connect with Ragavan one time with any kind of counterspell backup for Force of Negation, Daze, that kind of thing, or Force of Will, that kind of thing, you are just going to end up with a really dominant board state just between Ragavan and the fact that you're now able to cast those spells off of Ragavan and that extra treasure token that you generated. So it's a very, very underwhelmingly oppressive deck. It's an oppressive deck in a very underwhelming feeling kind of way. And so I understand the ban. I do want to caution people from going out and spending their hard-earned cash on buying into Ragavans, especially if they're looking to get into Modern. I don't want to say don't do it, but I do want to say that you kind of have to be okay with the chance that Ragavan could eat a ban in the coming months, in the coming year. You have to get, kind of prepare yourself mentally for that, because it could happen. It seriously could happen. Force of Negation and Izzet spells are a deck in Modern, and so it's actually, I think, Izzet Murktide, and so I believe Ragavan's played in that. It's played in so much red. It's played in Jund. It's played in Izzet spells. It's played in all of these different decks, and so Ragavan eating a ban, it might come down to it where it does eat a ban. So we have precedent with it getting banned in Legacy. It's not too far out of the realm of possibility to eat a ban in Modern as well. On to Arena. So Standard ate a ban, and so the banning is for paper and for Arena, but it's interesting for Arena for a couple of reasons. So Divide by Zero and Alrune's Epiphany got banned in Standard, as well as the Snow Haven land, and I forget the name of it. So Izzet Turns with Expressive Iteration, Divide by Zero, and a lot of great, just kind of amazing spells, was really, really hard to play against. I have a mid-rangey deck that I just kind of tinker around with for Standard, that I just kind of hodgepodge together, and whenever I play Izzet spells, it felt like I'm almost there, I'm almost going to get them, and no, they would just have this overwhelmingly crushing, just beat down plan. And so one of the things that's interesting about that is that I was playing a mid-range deck, and I have Duress in my main board for even the 1-of-1 format. I played Duress main board in my black-white kind of value deck. And because I saw so much of these kind of control style decks that were just kind of abusing the but abusing their control cards. Now, the Alrune's Epiphany is pretty ridiculous because it basically means that you can't now hand disrupt your opponent. That person is going to get their Alrune's Epiphany turn 2, exile it into Foretell, and now you cannot interact with Alrune's Epiphany. You don't know exactly that it's there. It could be something else, like Behold the Multiverse, I think, is one of their draw spells, or it could be Alrune's Epiphany or something else. And so it was very, very hard to interact with. You can't hand disrupt it, and so I completely agree with the ban. That card just did some disgusting things. Similarly, on a completely different axis, Divide by Zero did a ton of work. Divide by Zero, it's very innocuous. I mean, again, because it's it's a 3 mana bounce spell, right? And so you're like, oh, 3 mana. We've had better bounce spells than that in the past. We've had like Vapor Snag, we've had Boomerang, we've had Echoing Truth, we've had all these great bounce spells in the past. We've even had Brazen Borrow. Or why is Divide by Zero at 3 mana, only bouncing one permanent, and it has a slight upside? Why is that oppressive? Well, it's oppressive in a 1-of-1 format because you're only playing one game, and if you're only playing one game, and this is just this kind of catch-all answer to every threat that comes at you, then that other person can't reasonably get tempo on you or get ahead of this this bounce spell, because you're also scrying. I believe you're scrying one as well to make sure that the quality of cards coming up is good. And so it's very interesting to me that it ate a ban, completely reasonable for it to eat a ban. I wouldn't have guessed it though. I would have guessed Alrund's Epiphany, but not the Divide by Zero. Next up, they have, in Historic, they have a counterspell, and I forget exactly which counterspell it is, but it was an interesting counter that they banned a counterspell that they injected into the format. So Historic is not what I'd call a natural format. It's a format that they made themselves with the own cards that they printed from random times and during Magic's history. So they had complete control over this counterspell being printed. And I believe it counters a spell and they draw a card. I forget the name of it. Oh, I'm such a bad Magic player sometimes. Ah! No, I'm not. I'm good. I just forget. So it's interesting that they completely control the format, and then they have to go back on this decision. It's kind of sad, kind of egg on the face for them that they made such a poor decision. And it's also a really strange format because, like, if you get one dredge card in that format, that they can prevent the other dredge cards from basically getting put in there. And so it's a very unique format. Most formats will never ever be like that. No, most formats, even like, I mean, Eternal formats, no Eternal format gets that kind of hands-on treatment. They're kind of left to their own devices. So it's very interesting, the bans. Again, I warn you about really investing heavily into Ragavan unless you're okay with losing a little bit of money on that. Granted, I think Ragavan is going to be eternally good in Commander. It is a disgustingly good card in Commander, and I completely encourage you to go ahead and get into it if that's where you want to put it. But it could lose substantial value as soon as it gets banned in Modern. Modern is kind of like the home for it right now, that it gets the most play, and that format, I believe, is what's supporting the price. So if you're okay with losing a little bit of value on that card, by all means, you know, go for it. But I think that if you're hoping for a long-term investment, it's kind of a risky one. Anyway, love you guys. Thank you, Exterior Nation, for coming out. I will see you next time on the next video, but I wanted to put this out on the day of the bannings. Love ya. Where's the button?